was so good to win something, you know, when you receive that number, like to draw the numbers and like the raffle thing.
Yes.
And you always hope that you're gonna win something, no matter what the gift is, even if it's like a $1 gift. You're always like, it's a good feeling to win something. But at that event, you ended up winning, right?
Yeah, I actually was feeling somehow I'm gonna win. And the thing is, when they withdraw our number, the girls ran and they got the gift, and the gift was a book.
Yeah, it was a book.
Yes, and then when I saw I saw, you know, it was wrapped, so I unpacked it, and then I saw the word suffering. I felt discouraged to read this book. It's like, what? Suffering?
Not again.
Why would I want to read
a
book about suffering? But believe it or not, I went to Amazon, put the name of the book. I saw the reviews was so high.
Yeah.
So it encouraged me to start reading the book.
Yeah.
While the book started very harsh, talking about suffering, it started to encourage me so much about the word suffering.
Yeah, it's very true, because we always, like nowadays, we always hear about like bad news. We recently, you were closely connected to some people in Sudan with the situation that's recently happened in Sudan, and they had to leave everything. They had their house, their cars, their jobs, their families, they were all settled, and then just in a blink of an eye, they just had to flee the country. They were stuck on the borders. It was really terrible.
We can't deny that the word suffering exists.
Yeah.
We sometimes try to avoid it. I know sometimes myself, I try to avoid hearing the news. I try to say, no, this is not for me. This is not something that I will be facing. But it is reality. And today we're going to share some of the true stories that happened. And we're going to talk about what do you bring into your suffering.
I would rank the very first top one of them is the story of Jesus. Sometimes us as the human beings, we would say that Jesus definitely doesn't know what we go through. He didn't live in this generation. He didn't have this type of family. He was the son of God, you know. But if you think about it, actually Jesus was rejected and was hated even before he was born, right?
Yeah, he was rejected. The king, as soon as he knew that there was a newborn king,
Herod,
he wanted to chase him and kill him. He was rejected even before he stepped out of his mother's womb.
Yeah, exactly. And in Hebrews, this is a very encouraging verse. In Hebrews 4 and verse 15, it says that the high priest, that's Jesus, of ours, understands our weaknesses, for he faced all of the same testings we do, yet he did not sin. So he was like us in everything.
Yes.
He went through all the feelings we go through, all the sufferings we go through, except sinning, except the sin, right? Yes. And in another translation version, it says that we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. It means that we don't have a high priest who is unable to have the same feeling that we feel. It means that he actually feels the same feelings we feel. He went through the same feelings we feel.
Yes.
In Hebrews 2:18, it says, because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted.
Yeah.
So because he went through this, because it means that he understands, because he understands what you are going through, because he already went through this.
Yes.
Whatever you go through, he already has done it.
Yes.
All the feelings, even if we're gonna take the good part, like if you think now that you love him, he actually loved you first.
Yeah.
You suffered, he suffered first. Like everything God did first before you.
Yeah. And I want to also quote something from the book that we're reading right now. It says here, the Bible never minimizes the harsh experiences of life in this terribly broken world. And in so doing, the Bible forces us out of our denial and toward humble honesty. In fact, the Bible is so honest about suffering that it recounts stories that are so weird and dark that if they were in a Netflix movie or video, you probably wouldn't watch it. Every single character in the Bible has faced suffering and trials that shaped their faith, starting with Abraham, all the way, to the disciples. Every single one of them, their faith grew because of the sufferings they faced.
Yeah.
I want to share also 2 stories from the book we're reading right now. There's so many stories in the book, but these are the ones that touch me the most. We'll start with the story of Sarah. Sarah was, was a very, very normal woman, and she had a husband and 2 kids. She lived a wealthy life. She has a house. They were rich people. She was a believer, and she goes to church and serve. And then one day, her husband abandoned her and took custody of the kids, and she lost everything. Financially, she lost her husband, her kids, her house, everything. And because of this loss, she left the church, and she did not follow Christ. Why is that? Because when we go deeper in this story, we find out that her comfort was in the wealth and the luxury and her surroundings. She relied on the material things for happiness. While she understood the concept of forgiveness and eternal salvation through grace, there was a significant gap in understanding the gospel practical application. When she started to realize that she's losing her Savior and herself, she started to be encouraged to go back and ask Jesus for healing, to heal these wounds, to remove the security from the material stuff. And she went back actually to follow Christ. And now she's going on and she's living.
Yeah.
There is another story from a person named Freda. Freda went to university, and she was only focusing on being successful in school. She studied and in something in biology, and then she met someone. His name is Ezekiel, and he loved her so much, and they fell in love to each other, and they had the same goal, the same path. He had the same career, and they loved each other so much. One day, he had an opportunity, a contract to work abroad for 3 years. They thought, okay, let's do that. The relationship will continue. It's okay for 3 years, and he traveled. After a while, he called her back and he told her, I can't do this anymore. It's a firm decision. Our relationship is broken. We can't continue.
Yeah, he didn't even give her an option to...
He didn't give her an option. It was a firm decision. So her heart was broken. But what did Freda do? She ran into the scriptures. She ran into the Savior, and she ran into a small group in the church to get healing for her broken heart. And she did. And she actually now that Jesus healed her heart, she's now ministering to those people who have broken hearts.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question and then share with you a few points. What do you bring when you are facing a trial? And this is the whole point of this video. I'm going to cover 7 points, and these 7 points is going to help you identify the areas that needs correction or fixing. Okay, but before I do that, I just want to share a verse from Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23, and it says like this: watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. Our heart, everything flows from the heart. Okay, if you're facing trials, everything is going to flow from the heart. If you're not facing trials, everything flows from the heart.
Yeah, everything gets exposed in that time.
In the heart. So when you are in the suffering, what do you bring in the suffering? So I want to talk about poor theology. What does that mean? People think sometimes that you're facing a suffering or a trial is because God is punishing you.
Yeah.
God is punishing you.
Yeah.
I believe this one day in my life.
Yeah, I used to believe this too. The problem is that it's not the problem. It's the idea is if you truly know Jesus and what he has done on the cross for you, you cannot say that God is punishing you because it's obvious when the Lord has died on the cross, right? He has been nailed on the cross. He actually did this to be punished on your behalf.
He paid the price for the past, for the present, and the future sins. That's it. Therefore, there's no condemnation. I can get you the verse, but the idea here is that there is no more condemnation. If you are a follower of Christ, that's it. You're
Yeah.
done. He paid the price. We keep repeating this because sometimes it's a thinking or a thought that comes to our mind that we're facing this trial because God is punishing you.
Or another poor theology as well is when you think, and this is something I used to think too, is that, oh, this is my cross. Because the word of God says you have to carry your cross and follow me. But the cross that the Lord is talking about, it's actually yourself. Like you have to deny yourself on daily basis. Like you don't see your desires, your
Regardless
passion,
if it's violence or suffering.
like even if you are in a suffering situation, just deny yourself. But it has nothing to do like a cross, like a heavy weight that the Lord is giving you, and you just like say, okay, Lord, I accept it, you know?
Yeah. For the sake of time, I'm gonna just jump into the next point. Doubt of God. Sometimes we get doubts of God. What does that mean? That sometimes we forget His promises, we forget His presence, we forget that He's faithful, we forget His goodness.
Yes.
We focus on the situation, we doubt God completely. Okay? The second point here is unrealistic expectations of life. Okay, this can be shocking to some here. We are living in a life that our bodies grow old, friendships soar, marriages go distance, churches fall into difficulty, government, make mistakes. Somehow, all the good things that we have, we are gonna one day lose it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna quote from the book again. It says here, "We often fall into the trap of assuming that what we possess today will continue to be there in the future and the days to come." Sometimes we too forget that today is good. It doesn't mean that tomorrow is also going to be, or is going to carry on forever. We always get attached to the things of this life and forgetting that these are decaying. They're going away one day.
Yeah.
Okay, the fourth point here, unrealistic expectations of others. Unrealistic expectations of others. We sometimes forget that we're dealing with sinners.
Yeah.
I'm a sinner, you are a sinner. All believers are still
Everyone
sinners.
is a sinner.
Everyone is a sinner.
Yeah.
Yes, you're forgiven. Yes, you are
Redeemed, yeah.
You're reconciled to God, but you are still living in a sinful nature.
Yeah.
We are weak. So sometimes when we set expectations of others so high that we get our heart broken.
Yeah, we get frustrated and we start to accumulate bitterness because like you're waiting for that person to do something while that person is like maybe thinking about you doing something, you know, or like just setting expectations,
it's
unrealistic
so
ones.
And it's so easy to fall into this.
So easy.
It's the easiest one of point that I see in it challenges me all the time, setting the right expectations and not extremely high expectations. Again, I'm going to quote from the book. It says here, suffering is intensified when we elevate people too high in our hearts and they fail us. We cannot elevate people too high because people are weak and we are weak. So we cannot expect too high things from them.
Yeah.
So, okay, now going to the next point, which is also very challenging, pride. Okay, we sometimes forget that the things that we accomplished in lives, our strength and our ability, our minds, we forget that this is a gift from God. We sometimes forget that this is something that God has given us to achieve and do things. And people would sometimes fall into the mistake that they are become self-reliance. They rely on themselves rather than God.
Yeah.
So when they face the suffering, guess what happens? Panic. Panic. I'm losing control of the things I'm doing.
Yeah.
Ask yourself this question, and I ask myself and I ask you, what would you feel when you lose your job?
Yeah.
The minute you feel you lose your job, you're losing control. And when you lose control, this exposes that you are relying on yourself. I want to quote also from the book. It says here, when you live self-reliantly and the unexpected and unplanned and unwanted or painful comes your way, you panic. Okay? So another point that I want to share with you, and this is actually related to Sarah, the story that we talked about, materialism. Where is our security in?
Yeah.
We sometimes, get security from our jobs, from the money that we have, from the places that we live in, from the car, from everything. So When we start getting attached and making things, material things, our security, it becomes so painful when we face the reality that we are going to lose them. When we lose a job, when we lose something in our life. And the last point that I want to share here with you is selfism. Sin causes us to stick ourselves in the center of our life. We become the center. Sometimes, I think you said this, that when we live for Christ, we want His glory, not our glory. So when we sin, we make ourselves the center of everything.
It's true.
We make ourselves the center, and we forget that we are living for Christ.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what you said about carrying the cross. I'm going to read the verses in 2 Corinthians 5:15. It says here, Jesus died for all, that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for Him who for their sake died and was raised. We are called to live for Christ, not for ourselves. We are not to live for our agendas and our plans and our ambitions. We are to live for Christ.
Yeah.
That's the true meaning of carrying the cross daily and denying ourselves and follow Christ. We need to follow Him, not ourself.
Yeah. It's true that behind every sin is selfishness.
Yes.
Yeah, there is a selfish desire.
Yes.
So when you are in such situations where you actually suffer, ask yourself this. Who do you believe in? In 2 Timothy 1 verse 12, Paul was saying to Timothy, actually, he says, "For I know whom I have believed." This is one of my favorite verses because every time there is something that I have high expectations in it, or like I like not high expectations, but high expectations on the Lord.
Yeah.
Like I've prayed so much, I invested so much prayers and everything, and the Lord doesn't answer the prayer that I asked, my request, the way I wanted or the way I thought it should be. But I actually don't get sad because I always remember this verse that says, "For I know whom I have believed." Paul here is saying to Timothy, "For I know whom I have believed." We must know what we believe, but it's even more important to know whom we believe. But with Christ, I know that my trust in Him cannot be in vain. I know He is not a liar. I know my God is not a liar. I know that I know Him as a spiritual knowledge, a true knowledge, and I have faith in Him. And then he continues the verse and says, "And He is able to keep what I have committed to Him." And this is my question to all of you and to you too. Have you committed your life to Jesus? Because Paul here is saying that he committed his life to God because he knew quite well that he himself cannot take care of his own life. Paul cannot take care of his own life, but he committed his life, he committed his body, his character, his job, his reputation, his everything that was precious to him in God's hands. Why? Because he trusted in Him, because his trust in Him is not in vain. So to sum up all this, in the midst of all your suffering, make sure you know Christ.
We're going to talk about next time is we're going to talk about the traps of fear and the doubts and denials of our sufferings.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to the next video.
Yes. Bye.